What's going on? It's Brady here with Gonz and Oak. Today we're going to be talking about a really good topic, six-pack abs, the truth behind them, how you get them, etc. Let's go. Alright, when talking about six-pack abs, we're talking about the muscle called the rectus abdominis. It is this thin layer of muscle that everyone sees in the mirror as a six-pack. To understand the abs, you need to understand the core muscles in general. Your abs do not make up your entire core strength. You actually have these really large muscles such as your psoas major, that's kind of that muscle that runs in the front of your hip. You also have your spinal erectors, those large muscles in your back that always hurt when you're done deadlifting. You have all these very large and strong muscles that job is to support your spine and keep you upright. Your abdominals or your rectus abdominis plays a small part in this, but not that much. So when the skinny guy in the gym who has the six packs thinks he's stronger than you because he has a strong core, that might not actually be true. And you can have a strong core without having a six-pack. And the reason why is because a six-pack really only means that you're at a low enough body fat percentage for your rectus abdominis to kind of poke out. So the truth of a six-pack really is you have to be lean to have it. If you're 18 years or older, you've been going to the gym, you're athletic, chances are you have a six-pack, whether it shows or not. If it doesn't show, once again, it's probably because your body fat percentage is a little bit too high. And there's nothing you can do to lose just the body fat on your stomach. That's really has to do with genetics, which we're going to talk about in a second. But really, you just need to lose your overall body fat. And now we get to talk about genetics. Genetics play a huge role in abs. To use an example, we're going to use myself. This is what I look like. I would say I have very average ab genetics, not terrible, but not the best. Secondly, we're gonna use Max Tuning, who has pretty bad ab genetics. And lastly, we're gonna use Christian Guzman, who has pretty good ab genetics. So to talk about Max Tuning, he's an example of someone with less than desirable ab genetics. His abs are kind of off center and things like that. That being said, I think he has done a great job of working with what he has and creating a pretty good physique. I think he looks good. Now, Christian Guzman, on the other hand, looks a lot better. His abs are very symmetrical, very defined, and it all has to do with just his genetics. He has better ab genetics. Max Tuning is the type of guy that stores a decent amount of fat on his stomach, kind of like myself. In order for his abs to show, he does have to diet to a decently low body fat percentage. Christian Guzman, on the other hand, his genetics say otherwise. He's pretty lean year round, and so he has a six-pack pretty much any time of the year. Now, there's not much you can do about your genetics. Your abs might be offset, they might be weirdly shaped, you might naturally store your fat on your stomach. That is genetics and you really can't do anything about it. Now, what you can do is make the best of the hand that you've been dealt with. We have to basically take responsibility over our bodies and notice that yes, genetics is an issue and we're not necessarily gonna have the Phil Heath genetics, but that shouldn't stop us from trying to reach our full potential of the genetics that we've been given. Back to the rectus abdominis, there is not much potential for this muscle to actually grow because it's a very thin and spread out muscle group. So we can't expect it to grow like we would expect maybe our quads to grow. That being said, we should still definitely do our part in trying to develop as much as possible. And so when we do lose weight and be at a low enough body fat percentage for abs to show, they will look at its best. So to sum it up, your abdominal wall, your rectus abdominis, is a muscle that doesn't have that much potential to grow, but it still can. It's very dependent on your genetics, and we should just do our part in making sure that they look as good as possible for the genetics we've been given and for the hard work that we've put in to grow them. Your abs will only show if you're at a low enough body fat percentage, and everyone's basically different. So now we're gonna hop over to the gym. I'm gonna share with you some of my favorite ab tricks, tips, all that good stuff, including my favorite ab exercise. So, all right, here we are, we're in the gym. I'm about to demonstrate the cable crunch. It is my favorite ab exercise. I do this basically every single time I do abs. And that goes into tip number one, which is you should never try to survive your ab exercise. And by that I mean when everyone's trying to do their abs, they just try to get by. They'll use their other core muscles, those very strong muscles we talked about. They'll use their hips, they'll use every other muscle just to get through the ab exercise without actually putting any emphasis on the rectus abdominis. As you'll see, I try to use as much of a full range of motion as I possibly can. I like to get my spine in a somewhat extended position, down into a flex position or a spinal flexion. Because of the full range of motion that I'm using, I like to use a weight that's gonna not cause any pain in my back. I wanna be very careful about that, but still a weight that on the last few reps, I'm definitely gonna feel a big burn. Then my next tip is to breathe out as hard as you can when you are going down into the crunch. This is just going to put more emphasis and squeeze into the abs, and so you'll start to work them a lot more. Remember, it's not to get by the ab exercise, it's to do the ab exercise. And lastly, during this exercise, you'll notice that I'm not using my hips very much. Too many times in the gym, I see people doing this exact same exercise where they're swinging their hips and adding too much hip flexion. We wanna eliminate the hips almost completely and focus on just the rectus abdominis. The rectus abdominis' job is to move the pubic bone into the sternum. That is its job. And so this really identifies the best motion for it to be worked at its most optimal way. Anyways, so that's all I got for you guys. Hope you learned something. If you have any more tips, leave them in the comments below, any questions, things like that. And always, if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next week. Peace.